Hello friends, my name is Christopher. Today is the 1st of July 2020, and this is what's growing in Wisconsin. Of course, as always, this is not a comprehensive list because there are 5 different cold hardiness zones in Wisconsin. We're in Zone 5A here in Oshkosh, and I don't grow everything. But that's enough waffling, let's dive right in to what we have. And we'll start with Bits of the Orchard, which is finally in its entirety. Here we have a sweet cherry pie cherry tree. Judging by the thickness at the base, I would say it's probably 3 years old. It's been pruned, obviously. Interestingly, I really like its open shape. I have 2 different cherries, this and a Mount Mercy, or Mount Morrissey, I should say. I wanted to show these off. I showed them on Instagram. I finally made a little bit of art for the trees. On the front of them, we've got the scientific name, and on the back, I put all sorts of important information, like when it was planted, it's self-pollinating, the zones it grows in, the month you harvest, well, what kind it is, you know, standard, dwarf, semi-dwarf, etc., and about how tall and wide in feet it'll be when it's mature, like the size that I should keep it at. I've got one of these at each tree. Here, my Snappy Mac apple tree is coming along nicely. This also was girdled early in the spring in March, and I did the bypass, and it was one of 2 that seemed to be surviving well. It's not sending out new shoots from below the girdle, and it's sent off so far about 6 inches of new growth, 6 to 8 inches depending on where it is on the tree. The leaves are a lighter green than they are normally, and they're the lightest in the orchard, which just makes me a little bit concerned. It may be dead and it just doesn't know it. I'm hoping that it's not, and it's just not putting all the energy into growing here, but healing as it needs to at the base. Fingers crossed, we really won't know the fate of my beautiful favorite apple tree until next year. But the peach tree, which is the crowning jewel of the orchard, this is a Reliance peach, is doing exceptionally well. You saw all of the blossoms on it in May, and we had like hundreds of peaches, and they are self-pruning. So let me give you a close-up view to show you how many peaches I got. I have a lot. I have probably between 150 or so. They're clustering real nicely, and it's amazing how hardy these are, how well they hold on. I don't have animals that are ripping them off. I'll show you a different spot too, so you can just check this out. Oh, sugar. Anyways, you see them as I look through here, and I don't have animals that are ripping them off. In fact, they're not even falling off during windstorms. Excited to see these go gangbusters this year. It's our first year with the peach crop. I wanted to wait for the evening before filming this so the light was even everywhere. I've got a shadow over the entire garden. Before we go in, the goal this year was to plant nice and close, and also to encourage more vertical gardening. And a lot of things are at the 4 foot off the ground level already, which means throughout July and into August, things are going to be well above the 7 or 8 foot mark. It's going to be pretty sweet, and you're going to see the beginnings of that inside. On either side of me here, you can see things crawling up past about the 5 or 6 feet line. It's all green pole beans over here, and I have a male-female interesting kiwi that I'm growing in the middle, and these are all just morning glories and other climbing, vining flowers to fill it in. Should be gorgeous once they start blooming. And then opposite from where you're standing now, in the tunnel, all sorts of good things are coming up. The snap peas that we have here are pretty much at the end of their life. I've got them in 4 different sections. They are, of course, delicious. One of the first things to grow. I'll probably plant another crop sometime this month for harvesting in the fall. I don't know if I'm going to do it here or if I'll stick a trellis in one of the raised beds and grow them up that. We'll see. Filling in between the peas now, variety of beans. I've got squash that's climbing up, crooked neck squash, coconut squash, you name it. So on the 1st of July, we're up here. 1st of June, we had only just essentially come off the ground. Next month, they'll be all the way to the top. It's fun to watch this fill up, and it's beautiful to look at from the inside of the house. It's a really cool green canopy that grows. You can see the black jewel raspberries are starting to get some blush on them. I'll be harvesting these in probably 3 weeks. Definitely sometime in July. They get pitch black. They are really sticky, and they, I think, are fantastic in jams. I also put them in yogurt too. They're very seedy though, for what it's worth, but they're interesting. And my other heirloom strawberries are also coming along. I get 2 different crops out of them. The first one at the same time as this, and the other one about 6 weeks after that. But they're nice and tall. If we do a quick pano just here around the corner to give you a feel for it, you can see just how high up. In fact, I gotta reposition the camera and tilt around. So the tallest ones that you're seeing here are 6.5 feet. A little shorter than last year, but doing exceptionally well. And that's all new growth because I pruned all the dead stuff. The red currant is excellent. I would say it's about 2.5 feet tall and 1.5 feet wide. This is a year 2 plant. This is a black currant, and in fact there are currants on here. This I got from a greenhouse, and obviously it came from a cooler climate because it already had berries on it when I got it. Oh, you know, I've never grown black currants before, and I don't know if that was ripe or not. What an interesting flavor. As an experiment this year, I'm growing a row of peppers in ground right in front of the raspberries to test out the soil conditions and how well they do in the heat, but having shade from the raspberries. They are smaller than their counterparts in different areas, as we'll see, but they are flowering and they do look nice. The gooseberry that got attacked by raccoons or whatever decided to grow like crazy. That's almost exclusively all new growth, about 2.5 feet worth, and that will be full of berries next year. So nothing to harvest this year, but once I fence it in over winter time, I'll be harvesting like 13 kilograms probably next year. It's going to be crazy. All right, so around me here in the barrel section, I've got my ground cherries, which are coming up quite nicely. There's lots of little lanterns here. Once they turn yellow and papery, then you know they're ready to harvest. This is a zucchini that's doing quite nicely. I've been really proactive about squash bugs, and fingers crossed, none yet. No egg sacs underneath the leaves. I check them every single day, and I'm grateful. They're not here. They're not on any of my squash that are in the tunnel behind you, and they're not on the yellow summer squash either. Let's see, what else can you see? Well, there's mint, obviously, that's taken over the whole barrel, which is great. There we've got the linen, so linseed, also known as flax. And in the middle, actually, is the Bartlett pear tree that had died. It was doing great underneath the girdle, so I dug it up and I put it in a great big pot. So it's in hospital right here. We're going to see what happens, and if it decides to do well and grow over the next year or two, I'll either put it in a giant pot or I will transplant it somewhere else. But this is a good sign. I said before that some peppers are doing better than others. The peppers that we have here in the pots are much taller and they're growing in more full. These, I think, are the hot peppers, the ornamentals essentially. They're going crazy in both sections. And apparently I dropped in a couple seeds for those morning glories or whatever, and they're climbing and they're vining. It's growing up my sun pole here. It'll add some character. Those blooming flowers will be gorgeous. Well, let's start at my left. We have carrots. I have thinned these out already, probably once or twice, and they are growing, 2 or so inches between each plant. I'll be harvesting these sometime in July. They're a little bit behind where they were last year, but that's okay because I'm going to harvest these. And after I harvest my beets later this year, I'm going to plant a second wave of carrots over there. Doing a lot of crop rotating and second plantings this year to make sure I have a really good fall harvest. This is the first round of potatoes here that was planted, I think, April 15th. So we're going about 90 days, 90 to 100 days on that. So it could be between, the middle of this month or the beginning of August. Once these start turning yellow, then you cut down the yellow stuff and you harvest up your potatoes and you're good to go. This is the second wave of potatoes that I planted, and I did these, I want to say, the second week of June. Is that right? Must have been the second week of June. So these, well, maybe it was the first week. Either way, these are 2 or 3 weeks into it, and you can see they've grown really nicely. They crusted over the soil. I buried them a little bit deeper than normal. Got the first layer of leaves on here. I have to add a little more compost to this. The goal is to have staggered harvests. These also are yellow potatoes that have a longer grow cycle. So we'll harvest these, put them in sand, use them for a couple of months, then we'll harvest these, add them to the lot, so we have homegrown potatoes for longer. This was spinach, and I had, oh, by the way, this was radishes, and I harvested all the radishes, and then my succession plant for this was round 2 of potatoes. This was spinach. I harvested all the spinach last month, and now I'm doing round 2 of radishes. You can see I've got 4 rows here. I decided to go back to my row system instead of doing it like square foot gardening stuff. That did not really work well for me. I have to thin these out now that they're tall enough, but that's great. They grow quickly, and this gets good enough shade that I don't think they're going to bolt right away. They should actually form a decent root vegetable. Oh, and I've got another barrel of flax behind me, as you can see there. I don't know if I was supposed to chop the flowers off so they didn't form seed heads, so they keep growing taller, or what. My first year trying it. If nothing else, I'll have lots of flax seeds to use to make, I don't know, boiled linseed oil. Whatever, fun experiment. I am obsessed with my garden this year. I love, love, love how it looks. Everything is so green and so tall already. I mean, just get a feel for this. I'm 6'5", you know, I'm walking in here and I got stuff up to my chest and beyond already, everywhere. It's just gangbusters and it's beautiful. If you remember last year, I planted this bed of the asparagus and strawberries. And I think at the beginning of July, I maybe had a couple that were real thin and threadbare. And just look at it now, it looks like one great big fern. The asparagus is doing so nicely, as did the strawberries. We've had a couple harvests of them already, and they kind of keep coming on continuously, and I think that the asparagus ferns are so dense that the birds haven't been seeing the strawberries, so I haven't been covering the strawberries, and I've just been harvesting them. Fingers crossed that keeps up and I don't have to do netting in the future. I thought we could dive down and just take one more quick look at the asparagus. You can see how nice and densely things are coming up, and the asparagus just puts on these lovely ferns, and you just let it be last year and this year, and then you can harvest it like a normal crop next year. Just astronomical when you check this growth right now on July 1st as opposed to last year on July 1st. Pivoting just a little bit to the left from where we were at the asparagus, obviously this is spaghetti squash. Look at it now because it's going to go crazy and it's going to fill up this whole space in the next couple months. All right, lots to unpack in this particular frame. We've got 2 mammoth sunflower seeds that are about 5 or so feet tall, 5-6 feet tall there. Then we've got assorted zinnias. You can see some standard reds and yellows. This is a giant that's had orange heads on it. I've been letting them grow and then cutting them. We have lovely fresh flowers inside. And behind me, the tomatoes are all growing really nicely. Last month we had just seen them essentially getting established. And now it looks like my tallest one over there, I think it's a moon glow, is about 4 feet or so, and the rest are between 3 and 4. I am single stemming mine. That's my preferred pruning method. And then you have one main vine grows to the top, and then you let all the stuff go crazy. I'm also plucking most of the flowers, so all that energy is going into upward growth. In between all of these are the peppers, and I would say height-wise, they're about between the stuff that's in ground and the pots that we just saw already. Lots of flowers, so fingers crossed that we get some nice peppers out of it. So this is right where I was sitting. You can see I've also got some cabbage and some cauliflower in here. We got my first head of cauliflower there. The marigolds are lovely. It's great infill in here. Lots of bees in this bed and other pollinators, as you may expect. I forget what flower this is, but I planted it. It might be an aster. We are going to find out as we pivot across the aisle into the glorious section of Brassicas. These are coming along really nicely. I'm surprised they didn't self-select and maybe kill a plant or two, but Brussels sprouts are coming along. We've actually got some sprouts that are setting on. No other heads of cauliflower yet that I can see, but that's fine. They will come later this month and into August. In fact, I have already started seeds for the second wave once these are out. So again, hopefully I can get an October harvest out of them. Pivoting to the left one more time. Let's talk about the garlic. You can see the scapes are starting to brown. I've got a few yellow leaves at the bottom. Once only maybe the top 4 leaves are nice and green, that's when you know it's time to harvest. That'll be happening in a couple weeks. And of course there's a lovely little thistle in there. The impromptu trellis that I made out of these stainless steel pipes isn't the word, stakes, and the raspberry canes that I had harvested and the twine is working really well, don't you know? All these runner beans are climbing up. They are, several of them taller than I am. I love it. The runners come up first and then all the leaves fill in. This is really cool. some interesting shade stuff happening on this side as far as growth of the peppers and the zinnias is concerned, but whatever. And then on this side, we've got the beets. And it turns out that I really enjoy beets. We've got a great recipe for beet pesto, so I figured out last year how to properly save these for a long time in the fridge, so we can have nice, fresh, homegrown beet pesto whenever we want it in the winter, which is lovely. I'm also going to make sure we use these leaves. I think you can kind of use them like Swiss chard in certain recipes. But these will be harvestable real soon. In fact, I'm trying to get them about golf ball size before I pick them. Some are almost there. Most of them are not. My gnome is hidden entirely in the beets. Just fun. He keeps away the bunnies. Actually, we really don't have varmint problems. There's so much other green stuff that the rabbits just don't care, which is nice. Of course it's the corn. I'll be squatting for this, talk here, but I wanted to show you when I'm standing up. It's up to my mid-chest, which is great. You maybe take 6 inches off of that because of the height of the raised beds, but even at that, it will put it down to my belly button, and the adage is knee-high by the 4th of July, and we are surpassing that. So this is all multicolored popcorn. It's doing well. It's only had a little bit of storm damage, not so much varmint damage once it got above about a foot tall. I am definitely going to net it, though, once it gets a little bit taller so the birds don't get at the corn once there's actual stalks on here. But I'm pleased. This is so much better than last year when it was just wet and there was like a terrible corn harvest in Wisconsin. Sometimes I just like to stand and look slowly, and by sometimes I mean every day. But it's nice just to take a slow panorama and see such a variety of things growing all together in this wonderful little ecosystem that we've created here. All of the red geraniums are spectacular. We've been deadheading them constantly, and this year I'm fertilizing once every 2 weeks. Hey, sorry about that weird abrupt stop while I was in the front. My camera stopped and I don't know why, and I really had no idea where I was talking. I was in the middle of a stream of consciousness, so instead of going back out and finishing that thought, I just thought, well, this is good enough, and I'm getting kind of tired. So, last month I gave you a preview of the shed. I'll give you another preview of the shed to close it out. I spent most of the day today actually staining the beveled cedar siding that's going on here. Mwah! This will be done in a couple weeks, so there will be a lot of videos in a series out for that. So, that's my garden. That's what's growing. This is growing too, but I'm making it grow. And how are things by you? I've got lots of flowers that I just didn't show as well. Tiger lilies are going crazy, and it's a lovely time. It really is. That's all I've got. Go home. Thanks a lot. Enjoy the garden tour. Subscribe. All that stuff. Take care.